Hi, everybody. I'm George, and this is the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest, at least. And today's guest is just wonderful. I'm so happy to have her here. She's a comedian, a writer. You might know her from Thundercats Roar and Game of Thrones. Plus, her Twitch channel at Joan Haley Ford has been absolutely delightful to watch. And that's her. Welcome, Joan.
Hi, George. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely our pleasure. And you're a huge horror fan. It's
yes.
Like one of your big things. How did that love start for you? What was it, like something you were into for a long time, or is it a more recent love?
No, it's definitely something I've been into for like a very long time, like since childhood. Like I can remember, like I feel like a lot of like my defining like movie experiences were like staying up way too late on like Saturday nights watching like Monster Vision on TNT.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like horror for me was I remember being like really little and like really kind of terrified and scared of horror movies and never wanting to watch them. And then when I finally kind of like by force or by accident got exposed to these things, and I discovered that they still were scary, but I could get through them. I think it was like this like a little bit of like badge of honor at a very young age, where it felt like oh, I'm cool. It's like cool, and I'm brave. I can actually like get through these things. So I think that kind of like bonded me with horror for life, just looking at it as a kind of, it was a big moment for my life when I first started watching horror and being like, I can get through these. And I think, that's just what kind of made me a fan for life.
Yeah, that's so funny, because I was on the other side where I was also very scared, but I was like, oh, they could make it through. They're so cool.
Yes.
Horror was definitely, it was a late blooming love for me, but yeah, I was a very cowardly little child.
Me too. Yeah, I think the only reason I got and this is also a movie, like one of my favorite movies, and I think a reason I'm bonded to this movie like so hard. But the first movie I remember it being like I was so scared of ever seeing the movie Gremlins.
Oh yeah.
And then a friend of mine like forced me to watch it at a sleepover, and it was. At that age, it was like terrifying, but it was also like, oh, I did it. Like this thing that I was like so scared of ever watching and seeing, like I got through that. I just like, I like that. I like that rush.
Yeah.
Can I ask, did you have like a first movie like that really like solidified your love of horror even at a later age?
Yeah, Friday the 13th was the first of like the big franchises that I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to go through, and I'm making an active effort to be into horror. And there was just such a great combination of like the Tom Savini effects and just such a classic horror atmosphere. Like the reason that there are so many camp horror movies is because it's so relatable for so many people. And I went to camp and I had those fears, and I was from New Jersey. And so having it be like right from there, all of these things really just combined.
Yeah, actually, I just rewatched 3D.
Nice.
I think that's prompted me because I just did like a Nightmare rewatch. I think I want to do a Friday the 13th rewatch now too. But it does kind of like, I think you're so right that it does. I think there's something about, I mean, obviously camp just like aesthetically and geographically is like a great setting for horror because, you're alone and you're in the woods. There's like there's a lot of interesting things around that like a lot secluded that can make for interesting kills. But also it is like, I feel like a lot of kids like first taste of like independence, and it's like exciting but scary to be away by yourself. And I think that really those kind of, even if you're not processing those kind of nostalgic feelings of like, this is where I was first like on my own and it was scary, but I like it like really adds to the atmosphere, the kind of the sensation of it being just like perfect for horror.
Oh yeah, I mean, plus you got 10 Jewish kids in a cabin sitting there telling ghost stories at each other. And they're, it's definitely ripe for horror. I totally agree. Is there a subgenre that you find yourself more drawn to in terms of horror?
I do, and I think it's going to like it ties into the movie I mentioned. It's going to like tie into the movie we're talking about today. I'm really a big fan of like fantasy horror, which, I think a lot of, like, technically all horror is kind of fantasy in one way, or, I mean, not all, but,
right.
A lot, you could argue that, by the time you get to Jason being reanimated, those are fantasy elements.
Sure.
But I think the stuff that like really like brings in not just kind of like fantasy elements, but really like tonally are become like kind of fantasy films, you know, be they anything ranging from Death Becomes Her to even like the later Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Like I think I'm realizing like my favorite like Nightmare on Elm Street movie is 4, and even though, or 3 and 4, but probably 3 and 4.
Right.
And I feel like those are the ones that most feel like that have real, you know, Alice in Wonderland vibes.
Yeah, the kids really all coming together and building this team.
Yeah, and in 4, how it's kind of about like 4 really like gets into the kind of like logic of like being in a dream. There's like that great scene where, you know, the first time I rewatched 4 recently and I forgot about this, but that scene where like Alice keeps like repeating the same actions over and over, and the first time you watch that, you're like, wait a second, wait, is this really did I just have like a deja vu? Yeah. Did I just watch this? I think it like really like, I think stuff that really like keys into like the fun fantasy like horror elements of horror. And you could go like really goofy like that with like Gremlins, like stuff like Gremlins 2 or Death Becomes Her. And you could go like a little darker like that with like some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and like, I don't know, I just rewatched The Company of Wolves, which I like loved.
Oh yeah? I actually am not familiar with that one.
Oh, Company of Wolves is like Neil Jordan's second film. It is a kind of, the best way to describe it is that it's Little Red Riding Hood as like a horror film,
oh, cool.
But it's kind of more like exploring the psychosexual undertones of Little Red Riding Hood. It was like made in '84, so it was definitely during that like everyone was just trying to like outdo themselves with like werewolf effects, and there's some great werewolf effects in it. Most of it takes place in in colonial times, and you've got like Angela Lansbury playing like the like grandma. It's so good, and yeah, it's very fun. Very like a little bit of forgotten in like 84 was a good year for horror. It was a good year for fantasy horror because that's when Gremlins and the first Nightmare came out, and I think it's like a good little overlooked, kind of forgotten about gem, and definitely worth checking out.
I'm going to, absolutely. It sounds great. I love Angela Lansbury, so
yeah. If you want like good like 52-year-old Angela Lansbury playing like I guess she just got to play like I think she got old fast, but then she was allowed to play like old for like the next like 40 years.
Absolutely. And a wonderful 40 years they were, Miss Lansbury out there.
She still shows up. She was in Mary Poppins.
Hell yeah.
So,
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But the movie that we're talking about today, as much as those movies are all wonderful, we're talking about The Witches of Eastwick, a 1987 movie directed by George Miller and based on John Updike's book from 3 years earlier. Mm-hmm. Although there are several changes from the book, primarily things scrapped for pacing and budget. And I figured that we would talk about those at the end, just so that there's more context for people. But the movie also has a great score done by John Williams of most of your favorite 80s movies fame. That and the sound design were nominated for Academy Awards, but lost to The Last Emperor, which was done in part by David Byrne, interestingly.
Interesting.
Or maybe uninterestingly. I don't know. I like David Byrne, but
I love David Byrne. I haven't watched The Last Emperor in a long time, and I want to rewatch it just to be like key into that fact, and like watch it for the David Byrne sound design.
Yeah, especially since this score is really great, and so to check out what they were like, oh, this is an even better score. It's definitely that plus David Byrne is certainly something that makes me want to go back and check it out again.
Yeah, it's a good year for score. For scores. Also, you know what? I'm gonna say I obviously for reasons we don't need to get into, but I definitely kind of rescinding my Harry Potter fandom, and I feel like this score it hits all the good things about the John Williams Harry Potter scores in a way I kind of like. Obviously this is a movie I more grew up with this movie, so maybe that's why it speaks to me a little bit more. But I think like if you want that like kind of like jaunty but like haunting like John Williams fantasy horror score, this is great.
Co-signed. Totally agree.
Yes.
And this movie stars Cher, Susan Sarandon, and Michelle Pfeiffer. Oh my. Mm-hmm. What a starring trio. I can't believe it. And Veronica Cartwright is also excellent in it. She's so good in it. And I feel like she gets overlooked a lot when people are talking about this movie.
She's so good. And I was thinking about watching this today. I went in the movie thinking, like, if I was in this movie, like, let's say you're, like, taking Nick, like, because Nicholson is, like, having a ball. Like, he's, like, but let's say, like, if I was, like, which of the three would, like, if you were in this movie, if you were getting cast in this movie, which of the three would you want to play? And I was like, oh, no, you'd want to, like, you want to be Veronica Cartwright because she, like, just gets to have like I'm like watching that. I'm like, there's no way she just wasn't having like a fucking blast. This into like everything she got to do was so arch and so over the top. Flail about a church, screaming about horrors.
Yeah.
Like that had to be like the best day of filming.
Oh, I'm sure she was having an absolute blast. And it's so fun to think about things that even got cut. Like when she's, not spoiler alert, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but when she's throwing up the cherry pits, like there was supposedly a way bigger scene that was like a puppet that flailed about and everything. And her character, the fact that it escalates to that point is such a fun journey to watch her go on and degrade mentally.
So like degrade mentally and also just like physically, it's such an impressive performance. Yeah. She's such a delight in it. I also think like top like lost footage that I'd love to see is definitely up there is that like Veronica Cartwright cherry barf puppet. I wish we could see that. Like that's up there with like the like cut ending of Friday the 13th 3D for me in terms of like shit I'd love to see, because that's like one of the I think this is such like a tight, well constructed movie. Like every scene just works. Like it's Miller, so obviously the one part that's weird, there's clearly something cut out of that cherry pit scene because they kind of like cut away and they cut back. It's like, oh, I guess Richard Jenkins killed her. It's kind of hard to, and like it's like, oh yeah, they cut something there.
Yeah, definitely. And they kind of give you enough around it that you are able to pick up on it, but in a movie where the editing is so precise so much of the time, it does stand out a little bit.
It definitely stands out, and also, you know, just like that feels like a weird scene where the movie like holds back, and it, you know, like, you know, but small things.
Absolutely. And also, I'm curious for the audience out there, tell us what your most wanted to see lost footage is. For me, it's probably the Event Horizon footage that fell apart. But tell us out there what you want to see. Yeah,
that or the pie fight from Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And yeah, you mentioned, Jack Nicholson is just having a grand old time in his role as the devil here. It's a really fun performance. This is Cher's only horror movie, but everyone else has been involved in the genre here and there. Susan Sarandon did Rocky Horror Picture Show. Nicholson is famous for The Shining, and he and Michelle Pfeiffer both did Wolf. And Veronica Cartwright leads the pack with Alien, The Birds, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. 3 genuinely amazing movies, and she is great in all of them. So this is turning into the Veronica Cartwright fan pod.
I mean, why not? God, she deserves one.
Yeah.
Like, how's that? Someone should like a Veronica Cartwright like filmography podcast would be like a fun time.
I agree. Give us that retrospective, someone out there.
Yeah.
The Witches of Eastwick was originally set to be filmed in Little Compton, Rhode Island, but people were divided about whether the church should be involved in the filming of this. And so Warner Brothers was like, we don't need to stand around here and wait for this. And they just kind of like fucked off to Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're going to just film up here.
Which is perfect. Such a, like, it's such a wonderful like horror movie. Like, you know, especially like fantasy horror movie setting. Like anything like New England-y or like Salem-y is like just perfect for any kind of witch story. But this and I don't really know like what's the actual town and what's built set, but God, there's so many great locations in this movie. Particularly, like, I die for Cher's house in this, the kind of, like, little, like, river house that's, like, extended over the river. Like, kind of like a Soho artist loft, but it's also cabiny, and it's on the river, and there's, like, God, like, I would, like,
it's
rad. That's definitely, like, like, top 5 movie house I'd love to live in.
Yeah, it's really great. Shooting started on July 14th, 1986, and like you say, there were a ton of locations that they filmed across over the course of the 6 weeks, various towns in Massachusetts, and the Lennox Mansion itself was actually filmed across several locations. Castle Hill in Ipswich, Massachusetts was the exterior. The lobby of the Wang Center in Boston was the main hall. And then there were interiors at Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills, and the swimming pool and Darrell's Library were sets built on the Warner Brothers backlot. So 4 places just for that one mansion.
You know what's funny? I'm realizing I've been to like a kind of like a bunch of those places inadvertently.
Wow. There you go. It's meant to be.
I guess so. Yeah, I've definitely been to like the set at Warner Brothers that was like, you know, Witches of Eastwick filmed here.
Right.
Obviously, long gone. But I do like when I worked at Warner Brothers, I would love going to the lot and being like, once upon a time, you know, this was where Clamp Tower was.
Yeah. Hey, I would do absolutely the same.
Yeah.
And there's a small carving shop in Scituate, Massachusetts, which I did consult a Massachusettan for this.
Yes.
So that is the pronunciation that they gave me. Led by woodcarver Paul McCarthy, was hired to hand carve all the wooden signs for the businesses in the movie, which I really like that they like invested back into the community like that, hired someone local to carve all these really nice signs that are absolutely gorgeous. Give it such a nice feeling. It's great.
Yeah, it's so little of it like, if any of it like has a kind of like fakey set feeling to it. And I think, just building out from the actual like talents of this East Coast community, I think really helps to give it that flavor.
Definitely. George Miller did have a tough shoot, thanks to the studio. In a meeting about reducing the budget, Miller volunteered to give up his trailer because he was like, I'm always on set. I'm never using it. And so the studio was like, we can do whatever we want with this pushover.
Yes.
And they basically just started interfering and like cutting back on stuff. Some major examples that I found were asking for 50 extras and only getting a dozen, and only getting one camera instead of two. So not very nice.
Yes. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it was really Nicholson who the thing I always heard is like Nicholson really believed in Miller, and it was like Nicholson stepping in and being like, both going to Warner Brothers and being like, no, you're going to give this guy what he wants, and then going to Miller and being like, hey, like, I believe in you, but you can't, like, you know, you gotta like pick your fights and like really stand up for the shit you believe in.
Yeah, I mean, because Miller was like, I don't know what to do, and he started just like refusing to do anything. But the studio was like, we're just gonna replace you, and so Nicholson went in and he was like, if you replace Miller, I am also leaving the shoot. And it took him going there and kind of having his back for Miller to finally get this financial support that he needed. But, I mean, the interference wasn't even just financial. Miller said that producer John Peters would just, like, randomly decide that he wanted stuff including aliens. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
For those who've seen the movie, it's a pretty wild movie, but there is no place for an alien.
No, God, no. It I don't understand where they would go unless it was, you know, some very. I mean, the movie does not work tonal. Like I'm trying to think of movies where I'm like, what's that movie where like an alien just shows up like 3/4 the way in? And I'm like, I guess like The Man Who Wasn't There, but like that's a weird like lyrical Coen Brothers like you know, exploration of the sound. Like again, like that's not what this movie is at all.
Yeah, it's maybe if this movie also had a quiet Billy Bob Thornton. Then the alien would work, but unfortunately, no such luck. And Miller thinks that Peters was influenced by the box office success of Aliens, which came out in '86. And so, imagine seeing this like action movie. Like that's gotta go in our fantasy horror movie.
It's this. I do feel it's like this weird trade-off of, you know, I feel like so much of that's just very like coked up 80s like blockbuster producer thinking. And I think like you look back at like the 80s now and like we only really look at the gems and we're like, you know, like Back to the Future or this or whatever else. There's just such wild ideas for movies. Like they would not get made today. They're too crazy. And it's like you need like a coked up 80s producer to be like, fuck yeah, let's make a movie about Marty McFly almost fucks his mom. That's a movie that should be made. And it's like we need those coked up 80s producers to like take those insane risks, but also they probably also ruined a lot of movies, and they almost ruined this one.
Yeah, it's true. There's got to be at least one person who can kind of rein him back a little bit and be like, okay, we use all of the good stuff, none of the bad stuff.
We need like, is John Peters still alive? Pair up like Kevin Feige and like John Peters, and like let John Peters go crazy, like 80s John Peters.
Right.
Let's pluck 80s coked up John Peters out of time, put him next to Kevin Feige, and then like, you know, Kevin Feige can be like no, it all has to fit in our vision, but then Peters can be like, fuck, no, wait, we're making like, this needs some crazy bullshit in here.
Hell,
I would like both.
I'm on board.
Perfect duo. It's like it's the that's or just to say that's the odd couple.
Yeah.
Two producers working together. One's a wild like 80s guy, and the other's like the most like
meticulous,
regimented, like meticulous, like every movie must fit together, and they have to run a studio together.
Perfect. I'm greenlighting this right now.
Great.
But it even went to the point where he showed up with the stuntman dressed as an alien, and he told Miller to put him in any scene. It's the quote that I saw. I hate that, but I love that.
Yeah. Like, I'm glad it didn't get in, and I feel bad for George Miller that he had to put up with that, but also I love that. I love that. It's just like, but like someone so bold, so convinced that this insane idea is right.
Yeah, it's great. And Miller and Nicholson left the set until Peters gave up on this fixation. So they were the two. They were the Feige in this situation. But
every situation needs a Feige if you don't like it. The adult and the boy.
You're right.
Like, you can't have only Feige, which is why, listen, I'm not gonna not to delve too deep in this. I'm no MCU hater, but also they can get boring.
Absolutely.
Hey. Do some or just Kevin Feige do some cocaine.
Loosen up, Kev. Come on, man.
Listen up, Kev. You just need to let loose. Snort some blow, it's fine. You can ruin a couple of these, you can ruin a couple of these movies.
Yeah, they built up so much goodwill with their fan base that,
time to let loose, do some blow, and just, maybe you'll come out with gold, but I want to see what happens.
This movie, so it finally released in June of 1987 to mostly positive reviews, with one that I particularly enjoyed coming from Ruth Crawford, who mentioned that the film includes many fantasy elements. By far the most fantastic of them is the depiction of a single mother of 5 who has to work for a living and still has plenty of time and energy left to engage in wild adventures of sex and magic. If being a witch gives you the ability to do that, quite a few women I know would be very happy to sign up at the nearest coven. Sums it up.
Yeah,
I think that captures the fantasy elements.
Yeah, there are definitely parts of this movie where you're like, who is watching Michelle Pfeiffer's children? She has 6 kids. And, opening scene, we establish these 6 kids, and then, 2 scenes later, she's having, martini and, cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, which looked amazing. That looks like my perfect night. But, with her 2 gal pals, and it's who, you're divorced, your husband's left you. Who is watching these children?
Carol Strutchen is watching them. Fidel.
They say I guess they all just watch each other. There's 6 of them. Mommy has to go get loaded.
Good for you, Michelle. But it was also a commercial success in addition to getting positive buzz. It made $64 million on a $22 million budget. It's always nice when on this show we don't have to be like, everyone got it wrong and it failed and now we have to go back and correct the record. Yeah, we like the things that we like to do well. So good job, Witches of Eastwick.
Good job, Witches.
To get into the actual movie, I love the opening shot. Just right away, it's this gorgeous aerial shot of this little town, and the leaves are mostly green, but they're beginning to turn over, and it is pure autumn. It just gives you the feeling of the movie immediately, especially when that score kicks in.
It's very well. As you know, I'm a big fall fan. It is a very fall movie, and the way that kind of most East Coast New Englandy movies feel, they just feel like they come alive at fall. It is a beautiful opening. Just everything works in tandem to really just immediately get you into the world and the feeling of this movie.
Yeah, and they hit you with the names of the 3 main actors, and it's such an exciting moment to be like, oh, I'm in such good hands here. With this cast and the way that this shot is set up and everything, you're just really it's such a great
and all full on movie stars at this point. I mean, there's that whole argument of do we even have movie stars now? But just all across, just the 4 main, our 4 leads are just full on movie stars. I think all at the peak of their thing. And then also you got Veronica, and then eventually we get Veronica Cartwright, and also Richard Jenkins, 2 decades before,
I love
he was going to be Richard Jenkins.
Absolutely, and it's so great, and like you said, it's Cher, Susan Sarandon, and Michelle Pfeiffer just kind of right in the peak of the height of their powers, and They play Alexandra Medford, Jane Spofford, and Suki Ridgemont, respectively, who are three dissatisfied women living in the picturesque town of Eastwick, Rhode Island. And Cher has said that she was basically forced upon this movie by the studio because she was so hot at the time. And she would even go on to win the Academy Award that year for Moonstruck, which is a movie.
Another great, yeah.
And, and she was offered the role of Jane, but she wanted to be Alexandra, the role that Susan Sarandon had been hired to play. And Susan Sarandon didn't discover that she wasn't playing Jane until she showed up on location. And imagining that different movie is so crazy.
Wild. Like her and. Yeah, it's very wild because Sarandon, you know, it's like Sarandon is tapping in a little bit to her like things she does so well in like Rocky Horror too, where she starts the movie as, you know, kind of the circle of the three friends, like she's the most prudish, but like by like the halfway point, she's kind of like grown into like this, you know, or blossomed into like a little bit of like a sex bomb, lounging at the pool and like munching the, like a lot of great like eating phallic things in this movie, but like strutting through the grocery store in like a mini dress and like pumps and socks and like just eat like I don't think Cher could have handled. I mean, Cher's great, but I don't think she could do like I think she couldn't get to the starting point that Sarandon does. Like Sarandon, like Michelle Pfeiffer definitely can too because she does it so well in Batman Returns. But like Sarandon is really like can start so mousy and go to so like sexy. She's perfect for it.
Yeah, Cher has a je ne sais quoi, an attitude that is just she has too much charisma exuding off her at all times.
She can't bury it. Yeah.
She knows she's a rock star. And that's the problem. But it works perfectly for Alex, which is great. And this sort of the studio being like, George Miller, you have to put Cher in this movie, led to some bad blood between Miller and Cher, and he reportedly phoned her up to berate her on her 40th birthday, which I was like reading these quotes. I was like, George Miller, what the hell, man?
I don't like that, George
this
Miller.
This is so fucked up.
You got a star. You got like the perfect person for this. Like, I don't know. Deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. Angelica Houston also read for Alex, which I think would have been interesting. And reportedly Pam Grier, which was considered, which
really?
Yeah. Be Still My Heart. I mean, I love what we have, and I like looking at it. I'm like, I don't want to lose any of the actors that we have. But man, if Pam Grier was in that,
she would also be like, you know, would she have been the like only like the movie needs it, but like would she have been like the only like person of color in the movie? I can't think of anyone. I can't think of anyone else.
I think you're maybe
right.
Like
there might be like a kid in like Susan Sarandon's like band class, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, crowd shots. That's it. So it would have been nice, cool thing to think of. What if? But we did get three great actors for these women, and they're it's a great movie that we got as a result. So unfortunately, Pam,
would have loved
you lost out.
But like one of the few people that I could really see killing that role just as hard as Cher, Pam Grier's up. Pam Grier definitely.
Yeah, same kind of rock star attitude, in my opinion. After this aerial shot, we finally get a chance to meet them all. Alex is a sculptor, and we open up. We see her working on these like fertility figures, very Venus of Willenstein, or I think that's the name of it. And there are many already in her studio, and she starts chatting with one of her daughter. With her one daughter, excuse me. She only has the one. And then we see Suki in the garden surrounded by her 6 daughters, and she works at the Eastwick Word, which is the local paper. She works for Richard Jenkins's character, who is married to Veronica Cartwright's character.
I always like have trouble parsing this out, but it's like she's somehow more in like control of the newspaper. Like she owns it. It's her family's thing or something, because it's like later it's implied that Jenkins like has to like take orders from her for the paper. Yeah,
it seems like she owns it, and he's just like the editor in chief or something like that. And she does like she says you have to run this, and it's an interesting
like, I know
dynamic.
Rubbing at it, but it's like run this story about these 3 women being whores. Like that's the news. That's like please. There's front page news.
And it does show up on the front page.
There's basically a front page, like, which I guess is like, I do think that is how like small towns operate. Like you know, everyone knows everything, and word gets around, and gossip is news because there's like not a lot of real news. But yeah, there is just like the fact that like all these women are having sex is like a scandal.
Yeah. And then finally over at the school, Jane is a music teacher she has no children, but there is still sort of this interesting like maternal connection that they build with her, because she has several kids in a way as this teacher, and her divorce is final as of today. Congrats to Jane. And Walter Neff, I couldn't tell if he was like the principal or the minister or what this guy. That's what I suspected. But so yeah, her principal, Walter Neff, is like this sleazy little scumbag guy who rolls in and confirms her divorce and then gooses her.
Great 80s sleazebag type character, like fits right up there with what's his face from like Die Hard.
Absolutely. And I love this happens a couple times, but there are just like little jokes in the script where she's like, all right, everyone, horns up, and like it's just such a silly little like wordplay joke.
A lot of like little like little sexual innuendo in there.
Yeah. Also, interestingly, maybe, is that Walter Neff is also the name of the guy in Double Indemnity. I don't know what the connection would be, but
yeah, probably just some screenwriter being like, I need a name. No one. Yeah.
I love Double Indemnity. There
IMDb doesn't exist right now. There's no way anyone could like really like double check this. That I just took this name from another movie.
And in addition to Jane's divorce, Alex and Suki have lost their husbands as well. Alex has died, and Suki's abandoned her because she had too many kids, which, fun fact, Suki's husband, that's your fault.
Yeah. I mean, there's the co-ownership of that situation.
Yeah. Walter gives this speech. And like in the town, the reason that Jane was she was prepping the kids for this like big like town meeting over in front of the church, and he gives this lecture about morals, and he drones on and on and on, and no wonder the devil comes to town, because that is hell.
Yes. Small towns with their like prudish all-American values. No, thank you.
It's I mean, even just the few seconds, you're immediately like, I understand why they are so impatient here and like stressed out
and pent up. Yeah, it's all like very like repressed.
Absolutely. One thing I did think was interesting is that in his speech, he starts talking about families coming together and the bonds of community that bind them. And I was like, almost like a coven.
Yes.
So I
mean, I think so, and you know, so much. I think there's a lot going on underneath the surface of the film, which I think makes it a really interesting film to talk about and explore. But I do think there is kind of this ultimately at the heart of the film is this kind of push against the idea of like what is a traditional family, because ultimately like what these women are like searching for and what they kind of like find at the end is like a family with each other. So start, and we can get more on that at the end, but you start it with this idea of like this guy like setting down like what is this is a traditional family. Let's talk about it. Let's set these parameters, and anything that exists outside of it is like weird and abnormal and wrong. And like really, it's like when you get to like what these characters, they call each other family throughout the film, but like really like their journey and their want is like kind of getting to a place where they can like exist as that family without the rest, anyone else like dictating what that is or judging them. So yeah, they like set that up like real early.
Yeah, it's a really great setup too, because you're so like forced to watch it. It's not sugar-coated in anything. The fact that you're supposed to be annoyed by this setup is perfect for the payoff down the line.
It puts you like in the headspace of our main characters.
And to that end, Jane looks up at the clear blue sky, and she's frustrated and impatiently tapping her foot, and the wind picks up and a storm rolls in to drive apart this event. It's a Thursday night, and so the three women have this classic weekly meeting that they do, and so they gather up, and they all mention that they had all been hoping some variant of I hope it rains or that it gets broken up. And Fife Dog seems pretty plussed by this. She's disturbed, but the other two are just like, whatever. Like, come on, let's just get to hanging out. But she definitely takes notice.
Let's get to our like gin martinis and cheese whiz, which always looks so like good when I watch this movie. Like, I don't know why there's that combination it's definitely gross, but also like, I don't know, it is like ugh, like I love that scene, like kind of that scene we just discussed, the speech scene juxtaposed with that. It just gets you at like, yeah, you get where these women are. Like it's like their weekly meetings, our weekly getting drunk, like just bullshitting, like shooting the shit meetings are like so like essential to like their survival and support of each other in this town.
Absolutely. They have to hold on to each other because otherwise they'll drown. But hey, I'm happy to hang out and eat wheat thins with spray cheese. I'm down for that.
My second favorite use of cheese whiz in a movie, first, obviously, UHF and a Twinkie Wiener sandwich.
Oh, also great. Third one for me, Goof Troop.
Oh, Goofy movie. Oh, yeah, maybe. Oh, am I wrong?
Oh, yeah.
I guess definitely, like, live action cheese whiz, definitely. But yeah, Leaning Tower of Cheese. I guess it's
pretty great.
Definitely I don't know. Is it more iconic than the Twinkie Wiener sandwich? I don't know.
Wow, these are the tough questions.
Yeah.
I think it might depend on who you ask. You know, their age might be the differentiator there.
That's true. But I feel like definitely more people know Tower of Cheese now. But that was one of my like not to derail too much, but one of like my like I'm bored in quarantine things was like I'm finally going to try a Twinkie Wiener sandwich, and surprisingly good.
Wow, Weird Al, you've done it again, you son of a bitch.
He did, yeah, son of a bitch. It's like, yeah, oh god, yeah. It's like just a bunch of, it's like salty and sweet. It's just a bunch of like good shit like crammed together. Why not?
You like hot dogs? You like Twinkies? Who says no? You know,
put a little cheese on top. It's you know, you're gonna regret it afterwards, but in the moment, real good.
I'll have to try it myself. It sounds pretty good. And UHF, great movie. So if you don't know what we're talking about, you should definitely go check that out.
Weird Al's one movie opened up against like Batman and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Right. Oh my god. Not great for making
like hey, as much as I love Weird Al, not like that's like an early spring movie or maybe a fall movie, not like a let's compete with Batman movie.
Definitely. But in this meeting that they're having here, their little coven meeting, Suki and Jane are talking about how they have reservations about moving on romantically because they're talking about how it's the divorce is final, but Alex says that they're too young to lock it up forever. And that they start discussing their ideal man. And this is the criteria for their ideal man. Someone nice that you can like. Someone with a brain so you can talk to them. Someone you can be yourself with. And someone to watch over me. Has to be from out of town. Tall. Well, and then I like this because they're like, again, to separate them as so alienated from the town, they're like, it has to be from out of town because have you seen the people in this town? Really perfect there. A tall dark prince traveling under a curse, which is a really
specific
interesting and a romantic on a big black horse, really handsome but not too handsome, with nice eyes and a nice ass and a working penis, size unimportant. So that's their ideal man, which I mean, I co-sign.
That's a solid man. I mean, like, I guess, like, you know, it depends on where you are if you want to add the out of town. But I guess there's always something exciting about like somebody from out of town. So I guess no matter where you are, absolutely. Like out of town it might be a fun stipulation.
Yeah, I agree. And enter a big black car instead of a horse containing a mysterious stranger to town, played by Jack Nicholson. And he quickly like stirs up interest in who this guy is because he buys the town's landmark property, the Lennox Mansion, and he's going to be like tearing down all the stuff inside of it. Again, sort of looking into that theme of tearing down your sort of like traditional morals and stuff, and how this landmark property, like, what does that even mean? It just means that like these old people were there
a long time ago.
There, and they exactly. And things update and things change, and that's what Jack Nicholson is here to do, and shake things up in this town. And one thing that's interesting is that his name seems like impossible to fix in their
Yeah.
minds, which is just a cool touch.
Yeah,
that
it's
I
a weird, like, it's such a good old English, like, devil thing. It's something, it's very fairy tale-ish, you know, like, no one in the town can remember his name. It's great.
Yeah. And this, the arrival of Nicholson unnerves Felicia Alden, who is Veronica Cartwright's character. She's devoutly religious. She's the wife of the editor, Clyde Alden, who I mentioned. And she seems to have, like, you're not sure if it's like a psychic connection or this religious connection, but like she seems much more aware of what's happening in terms of like this assault, quote, I'm heavy finger quotes here, on the moral fabric of the town. She's so hyper focused on it because of this fascination with her religious rules and everything that she is able to feel it in the town, in the air.
Yes.
Felicia is, number one, concerned about the nesting habits of the snowy egrets, which is a reasonable concern.
Yeah, that's fair. I do wonder, like, in the 80s, because, like, there's a lot of, like, 80s stuff where, like, the Environmental Protection Agency are, like, bureaucrats who just, like, get in the way of things. I think now we watch that and we're like, that's a fair point, Felicia. Yeah, like, we should be concerned about environmentalism. I wonder if in the 80s it was more intended as, like, like, yeah, like, get in the way. Like, yeah, concerns for, like, birds, whatever, Walter Peck.
It does feel that way. It does feel like that was probably the way it's intended, but now it just serves to ground Felicia in maybe some real concern.
Yeah, it gives her a little bit of a, like, okay, yeah, it's like, you're grounded. Like, I can understand where you're coming from a little bit, Felicia.
Yeah, exactly. And she does just have this, like, bad feeling that I mentioned. But he does seem to be good news for Alex, at least, because he immediately buys all of the fertility figures from Alex's, I guess she's like her distributor. She owns like a storefront or something that is displaying Alex's fertility figures. And she describes him as riveting, which is, I think, such a great description. It's such an evocative term.
And like, like a perfect description of like Jack Nicholson. He is like riveting. Like he commands your attention in a very like what is coming kind of way. Like you don't know he's riveting. Like a great story is, where it's like what's gonna happen? What's he gonna do next? What's the next beat of this?
The next beat of it is that night at one of Jane's music recitals, there is a loud snoring that sounds like growls, and finally he's revealed. I love this camera shot as well, where it's the slow pan over the audience and then over to him, and he's, number one, completely inverted. And that's just a nice little touch. But then also, it's like such a complete counterpoint of the reserved and prim crowd. It's all of their fears are realized in this person, and I love
it is like such a amazing both build up and reveal of this character, and also I think just like a great example of how like Miller is really like directing every single aspect of this movie, you know, and because this movie is like definitely a comedy, and it's a very like funny intro. Like you hear the snores first, and then we like pan back through the crowds until we hit his like inverted back. It's such a good shot, but like the camera work really helps to like enhance that. And like, you know, I not to like complain about like keep like, you know, talking about movies today, but like I feel like you know, most comedies, what the ones we get, like they have their comedic set pieces that are directed, but then everything else is very like matter of fact and, you know, almost like sitcom style. I mean, that's even true of like some action movies, you know, the set pieces are a big deal, but like the rest of it is just kind of like shot. Oh, and like this moment, this reveal is just like Miller is directing it. He, you know, he's thinking about how the camera's going to enhance the comedy and the character reveal, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, and to your point, that a lot of comedies today feel so improvised that it's hard to direct those, because you don't know what's going to happen because it's not scripted, and so you can't plan for like camera movements and stuff like that, so you have to kind of just set it up and let them go. And because this movie is so tight and so immaculately written in such a way that everything is working to build, he's able to create these big sweeping camera movements that play for comedy in a great way. The applause at the end of the performance wakes him up, and he goes just wild, clapping and cheering.
Like yelling bravissimo.
Yeah, and it puts like a little twinkle in Jane's eye, and it's really, like, it's cute. I'm like, Susan Sarandon, like, it's such a fun performance in this little moment from her here. But the crowd is tittering. They are... Who is this? Who is this man?
It is already scandalous. It's already scandalous.
Right, yeah. Just this encouragement is a scandal in this town, which is, I think, pretty demonstrative of their regressive thinking.
Yes.
And after the recital, Jane receives a bouquet of flowers with the initial D written on it, and this sparks Suki's memory, and all at once, everyone else starts to remember it too. Yeah. Really, really cool moment, and it reveals that the man's name is Daryl Van Horn. And Suki's necklace breaks when she says the name, and the pieces of it cause Felicia, who just said, "What kind of name is that?" to fall down the stairs. Luckily, just breaking her leg, although it's pretty grotesque. Like, it's turned all the way around.
Oh yeah, and like you see, like it's a kind of a far shot, so like he doesn't dwell on it, but you definitely see like the bone sticking out of it. And I also like, I mean, it's a great, like, she is so like composed after she does that. She's like honey, I think I broke my leg. Just another great like telling us so much about that character, that like even she is so like, she has her like emotions and like passions on such deep lockdown that like you do something that to her that any other person would be like losing their mind in pain. She's just like, I think I broke my leg, and she has to like cover, like she's still like, she's wearing a long prudish dress that like got a little hiked up. She still has to cover the broken leg with it.
Yeah, it's really great. Veronica, you're great.
Yeah.
And the next day, Alex is checking out the mansion, and Daryl approaches, and he invites her to lunch. And when she's funny, he kind of like growls in approval and introduces himself. And I love their banter here. Yes. Great chemistry. There's been some reports of the two of them not getting along super well all the time. I mean, I don't know if that added to this sort of heat that's going on here, but it's a really fun scene where they're kind of having this back and forth.
Yeah. What is it? A little late. I love that, like, a little late in the season for lunch, like back and forth.
Yeah. And also, this is the first time that we really get to meet Daryl Van Horn. We've seen him be this over-the-top guy in the scene before, but now we're really getting to get a feel for him and who he is in terms of the way that he approaches people. At the actual lunch, which is huge, which I also like. It's just like a little like, hey, gluttony, one of the sins.
Yes, just indulgent and like I also like love like it's outside. It's like way outside on the grounds. I like there's something so decadent about that idea of, like we're bringing the food way, way, way out to the middle of this field,
and it's still pristine too. Like that they brought it all the way out there and it still looks immaculate is certainly representative of that. And he's coarse, but he has some interesting moments of dialogue here talking about the power of women and how he doesn't believe in marriage because it's bad for women and it suffocates them. And then the man complains that he's fucking a dead person and he's the one who killed her.
Yeah. It's very like he's telling, like, it keys into this thing that we're going to see throughout the movie where he's able to tell these women like the exact thing they want to hear.
Yeah, he's tapping into what they are thinking, and that is why he's so interesting to them. And so different from the rest of the people in town. And to that end, he specifically reveals that he's interested in women who are blossoming after unloading a man through one of the 3 Ds, which are divorce, death, or desertion. And isn't that a coincidence?
The 3D, and also, like that he's a D name, it all like ties together.
It sure does.
Yeah.
And they go in to check out the house, which is buzzing with activity, and he takes off his shirt and he puts on a robe and he luxuriates on the bed like a damn cat while coming onto her. Yeah. And he's just making a meal of that scene. It's so fun.
So great. Fucking, like, so sexy. Like, it's crazy how I feel like Jack Nicholson, like, paunchy, like, let's face it, like, paunchy, 50-year-old Jack Nicholson, thrashing around and really just thrashing around with no restraint, like in a bathrobe, has I feel like so much more sexual energy and charisma than like any of these like beefed up action star, whatever action, who's operating today that like has that level of like sexual energy and charisma as like Jack Nicholson, not really giving a fuck about what his body looks like. Know. It's like so that's not the ultimately that's like not the thing that's sexy, like what you do to your body. It's like it's just that like unrestrained like fun energy that makes him so sexy.
Yeah, he is going for it, and he's having a good time, and he's feeling himself. He's feeling sexy, whether he looks it or not.
Yeah, he's feeling it, and we feel it, and like he doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter what. Like I feel I'm not that I'm like body shaming Jack Nicholson here, but like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he looks like. It's like he's feeling sexy, so he is sexy.
Exactly. And Alex burns his ass and says no. And
it's pretty harsh.
Yeah, it is harsh. But she starts to leave, and he reveals that maybe he's a little more than he appears.
Yeah, really. I do want to say I love the moment in when she first tells him no, she like kind of goes through like this like list of reasons of like why she's saying no, and it's like you represent everything that's bad about men. You're not funny. You have a terrible sense of humor, and like for all of it, he's just like yeah, like he's like fair, and then like she's like you smell, and that's the one thing that like phases him. He's like what, and he like smells himself. I think that's such a funny such a funny choice of just like that's the one where he's like, oh wait, this cut through a little bit that you think I smell.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's a great little character choice, honestly. Yeah. And he describes himself as your average horny little devil.
Yeah.
And he sort of manipulates her emotions through that sort of speaking to exactly what they're thinking. And eventually she agrees to have sex with him. In the hospital, Richard Jenkins is at his Richard Jenkinsist as the beleaguered husband, spoon-feeding his wife while she lambasts him. Veronica Cartwright, again, just fantastic. First of all, not only is she giving this amazing speech, which is fantastic, but two, she's doing this while choking down spoonfuls of porridge that are coming in hot as he tries to make her be quiet.
Yes.
It's so funny that she is just choking those down, dead eyes locked onto Richard Jenkins.
Yes.
And this is ascribed to bone marrow leakage, but really we're like, oh, it's the connection to God reacting to the presence of Daryl.
Yeah.
What really is it? And she says that she feels the evil crawling inside her and freaks out when Suki drops in to drop off some flowers for her, which was very nice of her.
Yeah, that was very nice.
And Jane is practicing her cello that night when the bowstring snaps and the doorbell rings, and surprise, it's Daryl. And he kind of just like flirts at her as she pours tea. And she's reserved and kind of shocked by his rakish attitude. And another fun sin thing that I noticed here in terms of like the devil and the 7 cardinal sins, he's wearing slippers the whole time for like that like sloth kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah,
really fun. And she admits that he makes her nervous when she overpours her teacup and fills the deep saucer as well. And that is such a funny reveal as like she's just standing there pouring and it slowly fills up and she looks down. And Susan Sarandon's like reaction to the fact that she filled it up too much is so
it's
great.
like what? Yeah.
And the two of them sit down and they share a polite conversation. Jane explains that the Lennox mansion was built on a site where alleged witches were burned at the stake, and they commiserate about the witch trials being patriarchal bullshit from doctors putting midwives out of business. And they kind of touch on the idea here that men are scared that women retain their vitality and threaten their power, which emasculates them, and lash out to cower women into being afraid of their power, men, and themselves.
Yes.
Which I think is, first of all, fairly accurate and reflects a lot of attitudes at the top in not just like many industries like he's talking about, but just our culture at large. It's very easy to extrapolate this out on a larger scale.
Yes, absolutely. And I also think it like I think like Nicholson is playing, but also is also here like playing a little bit of like an archetype we'll see like a lot of like 20 years later, like kind of like he's kind of like a woke bro, like you know, he's definitely, I don't want to question him. I don't know if he like how he really feels about this stuff, but he's also definitely employing like to lower defenses and get in her pants.
It would be a lot easier to feel out the way that he actually comes down on this if he wasn't in the middle of trying to seduce her.
Absolutely. But he's definitely, I mean, he's a woke bro. Good. Which
I think that's a great description.
Yeah.
And they go to play some music, which Daryl says is the one thing that makes him humble, which I think is pretty fun as well.
Yeah.
And Daryl compliments Jane's playing, but says that her bowing sucks because she's too restrained, and he encourages her to let her passions out. Yeah. She plays faster and faster, accompanied by Daryl on the piano, until finally the cello catches fire.
Yeah.
Much like her passions. And she drops it and rips open Daryl's shirt and jumps on him. And good for you, Jane. You earned it.
Good example of like, the physical metaphor that we're watching for sex getting like just cartoonishly out of control in a way that like is maybe like just as evocative as watching like the sex on screen, but like obviously I think the big one's coming up with it. We'll talk about the tennis scene when we get to it, but yeah, very like Looney Tunes ish
slapstick.
But sexy, such a bizarre combo that you're like, this shouldn't work. But like Miller is such a like craftsman and so meticulous that it works amazingly.
I totally agree, and that everything leading up to that scene is so fun for me as well. I mean, it's the following week. Alex and Suki are biking to Daryl's mansion, and she's so hype on him. She's like, oh man, you're going to love him, and so is Jane, and it's going to be great. And they arrive, and Jane's already
there. She's
glamorous
lounging
as hell.
Yeah.
She's living the life of Riley. She's got her martini there. She's killing it.
Yeah.
But we've seen him interact with Alex, and we've seen him interact with Jane. He now ignores both of them to flirt with Suki, and tensions and tennis flare among the women.
They go to play, she thought they were playing Suki thought they were playing singles, but they're actually playing doubles. So
they sure are.
It's Jane and Daryl versus Suki and Alex.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a great, super fun tennis match. And as they're sort of working out their tensions with each other, and this sort of like jealous undertone there, they are hitting the ball and yelling at each other, and their combined emotional state causes their powers to sort of emerge for the first time here.
Yes. Them fully being in control of the powers.
Yeah. And they levitate this tennis ball, and they slow it down, and they're like hitting it all over. And there is like this just slapstick portion of the movie that I really love.
And there's a couple like things I really love. Like, it seems like for a hot second, they're going to go down like the shittier route of like, okay, this is where all like it's going to be these three women like fighting over. That's going to be the movie. It's going to be these three women fighting over Van Horn, and like they tease you with that tension and then like dispel it almost immediately. They're like, no, this is about these like a movie about how these three women's powers like amplify each other, and like it's the scene becomes about them like discovering that, and it's like really like joyous and beautiful, and but also like it's just like zany as hell, like cartoony slapstick.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, the special effects company famous for Star Wars, was hired to animate the tennis ball during the magic moments, but it turns out that all three actresses were bad at tennis, and so they wound up just animating the whole thing, barring a few close-ups, which I thought was funny. And as you say, this is sort of a metaphor for them figuring out their relationship together and how they're going to support each other and maybe form this like polycule. And they relax. It cuts right from them playing this tennis game to them relaxing in the pool that night.
Yeah.
And they're drinking. And Suki, at this point, is resigned to this seduction that Daryl is laying down on her. And she talks about how she's unperturbed by the magic because nature is a peculiar place. And we see that there's this like tacit agreement among them that they're going to share Daryl, and they all dance in the main hall surrounded by these beautiful pink balloons, and it's super fun. It's really a gorgeous scene. It looks amazing.
And also, like, I love the fact that they refrain, like, there's no scene in this movie, there's like, they refrain from giving us that scene where they're like, they all like are collectively like, we're witches, or like, we're gonna have it's like, it just lets it kind I think that's one of the things, it makes it feel so natural. Like, this is just like a natural part of the world. And like, it's just like this kind of like, it feels like this is a culmination of like probably like a lifelong thing these women were probably experiencing individually, and they got amplified when they're together. And they, you know, there never needed to be that moment of like, we're witches, we conjure the devil, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
It makes it feel so much more natural, like naturalistic, and like, it's just like you get sucked into the flow of it with them. And I think that kind of feeling is also what allows the more like, you know, Looney Tunes-ish stuff to like really work.
Yeah, and I think that that's also a sign of the movie like trusting its audience in a way, to not have to have that exposition spelled out of like, okay, we're witches and gonna share this guy, and now let's see what's gonna happen. Like, won't this wacky town hate us? Like, that never happens, because the movie trusts you to follow along with what's happening and pick up on the relationship that's developing. And when a movie trusts you, that sort of instills a confidence in the movie that
absolutely
people pick up on.
And I think that's something that's so like true of like across of like all of like Miller's filmography, is that he trusts his audience, but he's also good at like giving us like the subtle, building out his worlds with the smallest of building blocks that all add up to just be like, oh, we get the whole picture.
They're doing this great dance scene. It's a lot of fun, but an aggressive dance move sends Jane flying.
Yeah.
And she goes across and she lands in the chandelier, but she is soon joined by the others who float up to her, and they're all flying around, and we get to really see them enjoying their powers, and it's such a fun, happy moment for them that we've found our little group here. We acknowledge what we are to each other, and
even like Nicholson's, you know, Van Horn's like reaction in that moment is so just like genuinely. There's always the question of like, how much is he manipulating these women? How much is he taking them for a ride? But in that moment where he's like talking to his dog and he's like smiling, just watching them absorbing joy from like the joy they're feeling. And he's just like, it's a genuine moment of wonderment where he's like, you know, look at them. I think the line is something like, look at them. Like they're doing this. These are like humans. It's like, it's a really lovely moment that like is another one of that, like, you know, I like that you could never fully peg what the relationship between the women and Van Horn is. It's like, and that's a moment that really like just makes it so much richer.
Absolutely, it totally does. Unfortunately, a bell rings and they're snapped out of it, and they all fall to the ground, or they fall in the pool, I think. Yeah,
in the pool. Yeah.
Time passes, and still manic, perhaps even more manic now, Felicia has a fit at church about how they're living in a den of iniquity, basically. Yeah, she goes off on this huge tear about the mansion and how they're doing drugs and sex and anal intercourse and dildos.
Yeah, and it just starts with like the priest is giving a sermon, and then she just like it's like she just has a realization that she can't like, you know, hold in. Like I love that there's nothing like it's not like something in church triggers it. It's not like the priest says something about the devil and then she's like, it's just like she's like hit with something and she starts like whispering the word whore, and then it's like her own little game of penis where she has to keep yelling the word louder. She's just like whores, and it's like such a wonderful moment. It's so good. It's so funny. She's so funny in this.
Yeah, and she's literally dragged out screaming about dildos and anal intercourse, and begs to be heard. She literally begs to be heard before her voice is once again silenced by some men dragging her out.
Yeah.
And Jane is back at work, but now she's loose. She's loosey-goosey. She's got a crop top. She's got a perm.
Yeah.
She's killing the game. She looks amazing. Susan Sarandon, I'm in love with you, for the record.
Yeah. Be wonderful in this, yes.
And she's bored at work now because the kids are playing the same shit shittily.
Yeah.
And she has them throw the rules away.
Yeah.
Much like her and her new family.
Yeah, she says we're just gonna put the music away and we're just gonna play the shit out of this.
Hell yeah, it's just delightful.
Yeah.
Also, it was her instructions to the kids, I noticed, were similar instructions to what Daryl said to her about feeling it pass over you and let it tingle. And it's just a nice, like, sort of, she really took the words to heart.
Yeah.
And this is why she is so changed for, in my opinion, the better, clearly for her opinion as well. And this cuts to when she's rolling down the supermarket aisle, which this scene is so great. She's just killing the game. She reaches into someone else's hands to grab something out of it. She's like, oh, I love this.
Yeah, she's just buying like the junk food she wants.
But this is when it's revealed that the paper has written about them as Felicia wanted. When Jane realizes this performance is just incredible. You literally see her confidence puncture and she deflates. It is remarkable what happens in this scene. It's just so good. And Suki confronts Clyde at the newspaper, and he defends it as having only reported the facts and that he doesn't actually own the paper and that it's Felicia and that he wants her to see a psychiatrist for her visions, but she refuses. And, you know, you start to feel pretty bad for Clyde, although he's certainly not doing very much to help with the situation. I mean, he's very apathetic.
Yeah,
besides sort of luxuriating in his own misery.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he's like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of interesting. I think just with the Felicia character and her relation, it's like there's a lot of interesting things to unpack. But he is definitely another, like, you know, he's definitely fed off Felicia. And like now that the relationship is going in a hard direction, he's like woe is me.
Yeah, you can kind of extrapolate their past relationship where, like, oh, he was working at this newspaper and maybe he starts dating the owner's daughter and he uses that to leverage himself into a higher position.
Yeah, because he says that I mean, he says they met in high school, and that she was like a knockout, and like, yeah, there's that sense of that. There's that, like, you do feel bad for Jenkins, but there's also that feeling of like, yeah, like this, you know, you married like the prom queen, and you're upset that 20 years later she's still not the prom queen. Kind of with her having been like, she's just like really conformed to the rules that like this town and this man probably, like, you know, laid down for her. This is like, you know, we are a religious town. We are like conservative. We are prudish. We are, and like she like, and now she's kind of being punished for being the vessel for all of that.
Yeah. As much as I agree. As much as you feel bad for Jenkins, feeling bad for him just makes you feel worse for her.
Yeah.
Because of what clearly has led her to this point.
Yeah.
Over dinner, the group debate breaking up because their outcast nature is starting to affect their lives. And I think that this is sort of a very reasonable thing, especially in today's culture. I think that probably a lot of people can relate to this in terms of polyamory becoming a much more accepted thing, but there are still people who are strongly against it. And I imagine that can get really tough for the relationship.
And, you know, it's of the time, so I get it. But I feel like this movie there's a lot of stuff that if this movie were made today wouldn't be in it. So, like, I'm glad it was made what it was. But I feel like I don't think the movie would be as afraid of, because there's that one line where I forget who it was, but one of them's like, someone at school told my daughter that her mommy's a dyke. And like, I feel like the movie wouldn't be as maybe afraid of explicitly, you know, I feel like the movie's afraid of like even implying that like there's something sexual going on between like the three of them. Not that there has to be, but like, I feel like the movie wouldn't be so explicitly like, there is not, do not read this into it.
Right. I agree. And Daryl, again, you're sort of not sure where he's really coming from, but he encourages them not to worry. He says that they're a family and that they'll stick together, and don't worry, have these cherries. Yeah. And basically he tricks them into casting a spell on Felicia, and things are not going well for her.
Yeah.
She's coughing up these cherry stems and pits, and it's pretty disconcerting.
Yeah.
As she has another fit about God making us in the image of goodness, but we've become animals devouring each other and the earth. And, you know, how she says that Daryl is using the women. She is the one who says this. And she's been right about like him coming to town and everything, and this is sort of what plants the seed, because she says, I have to warn them. I have to warn these women, and it is sort of like, is it a woman looking out for her fellow woman?
Yeah, because you're right. She's not totally wrong. There is a different reality where, in a different world, in a different set of circumstances, she could have been like the fourth in this, like in a coven can have four. She like in the craft, like she could have been the fourth in this, but she was so like by circumstance dragged in this other direction like there is still like she is still like in her own kind of like warped, misappropriate or whatever way. She is still thinking about these other women and like looking out for them. She just doesn't know how to do it in a way that's not informed by her kind of like shitty, like conservative, brainwashing.
Yeah, and she also, in what winds up being an interesting through line, is she says that she needs to warn them about having his kids, which will destroy the world.
Yeah, which she's right. She's right about.
Yeah, but unfortunately for her, the vomiting persists, and horrified by her uncontrollable behavior, Clyde kills her with the fire poker.
I think that's important. It's like, at the end of the day, like, the witches, they didn't kill her. It was like Jenkins being like, you're too out of control. Like, this is too embarrassing for me. I don't know how to deal with this. So, like, she's an out of control woman that like at some point just needs to be like put down.
And they mentioned that he had like started drinking again and everything, and so obviously that happens in a lot of abusive relationships. There's an element of addiction. Yeah, he kills her, and this is when the live-action animatronic puppet of Veronica Cartwright would have been employed.
Yeah.
Apparently, it gathered a lot of attention on set because it could realistically thrash around and convulse and spew out massive amounts of vomit on cue. That's a quote. But preview audiences found the sequence too disgusting, and so they cut out all the shots, and we are worse off for it. But
yeah, boo. I would love it.
But after Felicia's death, the three women freak out and start yelling at each other, and their power, again, it's sort of this heightened emotional state, it makes the ground sort of fracture beneath their feet, which is, again, very metaphorically appropriate in terms of the shattering of their
threesome or whatever you want. Yeah, their family, yes.
And this scares them, and they agree to avoid each other and Daryl until this all blows over. And Daryl is upset about being left out in the cold. One thing that I noticed in the production design here that I really want to call out, that I thought was just like a really cool little touch, is that the centerpiece on the table here, as the camera pans to him, is art of Leda and the Swan, which is the story of a god coming to Earth and, in that case, raping, in this case, having sex with mortal women who proceed to give birth to kids that shape the face of the Earth. It's that the Greek mythology, Zeus and Leda. So just a sort of an interesting
I didn't know that
parallel there.
I love this. I feel I learned something.
There we go.
Yeah.
And he calls Alex and he tries to convince her to see him, but she refuses, and he leaves claw marks on the desk in a rage. Mm-hmm. And then he tries to drop in on Suki, but she nervously stands her ground when he tries to tempt her with some fruit. Another classic devil move. Found fun and appropriate. He tries to get Jane too, but she's not home, so he leaves an ominous calling card of sheet music with a big D scrawled across it in blood. Pretty wild. But the reason that she's not home is because she's at the doctors, who tell her that she's pregnant despite her previous inability to conceive. So there is like a magical element to it, but she's so happy too. Like the reason that her husband left her is because she wasn't able to conceive. And there's a lot of sort of elements of her talking about feeling less than because she didn't have this. And while there certainly is nothing wrong with women who can't conceive, for her, this fulfilling of one of her desires and making her feel like that isn't the case anymore, she isn't less than, I think is a really interesting and great moment of sort of like all of this negative stuff that's happened so far has still had these positive impacts on her.
Yeah.
So
like you said,
this came from living her life.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, she clearly wants to be a mother, and she has a lot of motherly energy to give.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a nice moment for her, and it comes from her being true to herself and living the way that she wanted to, which is great. And she heads to tell Daryl, who is not doing so hot in his despair. And she sees him fixated on a video of them saying their worst fears, which he causes to become realized. Jane ages quickly, and she runs out to warn Alex, although, I mean, her hand just kind of becomes a little wrinkly.
Yeah.
And her face is a little makeup. But,
a little makeup-y, yeah.
Yeah, but she's not in time to warn Alex, and Alex wakes up in a bed full of snakes. One thing I really respect about this movie, again, it's sort of like a production design thing, a ton of different kinds of snakes. They weren't just like, give me 100 ribbon snakes.
Absolutely. I mean, it was like around Indiana Jones times. It probably just it was like heyday for like snake wranglers in Hollywood.
What a time to be a snake wrangler. In Hollywood.
now those would 100% be CGI snakes. Like, it'd be so sad.
Absolutely. But that was Cher's biggest fear, and Suki experiences sudden stabbing pains from using fruit like a voodoo doll. Mm-hmm. It gets kind of scary because she really starts to fall apart pretty quick, and it cuts to the doctors where he says that she's still hemorrhaging blood and they can't stop her, and the women are determined to stop Daryl from carrying out this sort of murder. And it's revealed in this moment also that all three are pregnant.
Yes.
Which is another interesting point that Veronica was in fact correct about. But it is also interesting that Suki was like, oh, I get pregnant at the drop of a hat, and Alex had the one child already. And so it is sort of like all three of them getting that, when they couldn't decide on the penis size either. Yeah. They all, they're on all elements of the spectrum.
Yes.
And Daryl is able to sort of fill this niche for all three of them. And Alex goes to confront Daryl, where he flies off the handle, screaming about how they abandoned him, and all he wants is what any man wants. And he pleads with her to come back to him again. And this monologue from Jack Nicholson is powerful.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
It's such a turn from this little slinky seductive guy who is all sweet talk and knows how to manipulate them perfectly, and for him to so clearly drop all pretense and finally get a look at what he is really feeling. Yeah. It's quite a moment.
It's so good. It's one of, I mean, we'll get to the next one later, but it's one of two really great, I feel like the one at the end is a little more fun. This one is definitely the scarier of the two, but one of just two great rage-fueled Nicholson monologues in the movie. I think I'll get it, we'll get into some more when we're talking about the final dissertation on the film, but it's why I really think this is Nicholson's best horror performance, better than The Shining. I think it hits so many in a way that's really well balanced and really works the film's benefit in a way that I think some of the performance in The Shining does. It hits all the great hits everything you want from a Jack Nicholson performance in a bunch of different ways.
Totally. And I think that it's really interesting that we talk about how there is this element of him using woke language and stuff to sort of manipulate these women, and in this we sort of get the opposite, where he is demanding this love and affection and respect, and she doesn't really have a choice because the life of her friend is at stake.
It's like the mask. It's like the mask drop. He can say it. He knows how to say the words, but he doesn't necessarily. He doesn't he talks the talk, doesn't walk the walk. There's even that element of when she finds him, he's ironing his shirts, and it's never expressly said, but it's this idea of he's been reduced. These. It's almost like these bitches have reduced him to doing the women's work. It's see what happens when the order really breaks down. It's it's little old me ironing my shirts.
And they're all burned as well.
Yes, they're all burned,
So,
yes.
like, he's like, oh, I can't even do this well. And the power dynamic is just so shifted in one direction that Alex has no choice but to basically agree to come back to him.
And I think it reflects what we see with like in a grander, more arch way. It's like what we see with the Jenkins character. It's like once things start going like south, it all like these are like nice, like, you know, in their different ways. Jenkins and Van Horn. I'm using one real name, one character name, but are, you know, they are giving these women what they want. They're like good guys, and then like things go a little, like things just like are out of whack. They feel put upon. They feel like they're not getting exactly what they want, and they turn into monsters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And all of those things that Daryl said about men feeling threatened and how they use this power to cow women into doing what they want. It's all on display.
He's embodying it. Yes.
So really great scene. Yeah. Really great scene. And she agrees, like I said, to save Suki, and she does indeed stop bleeding immediately as soon as Alex kisses him. And they realize together that the only way that they can get rid of Daryl is by using witchcraft against him. Otherwise, he will just kill them. Yeah. And the women reunite with him, pretending to have made amends. And after what was clearly a raucous evening between the four of them on that bed, Daryl heads out the next morning, which I think it's so funny that he's covered in smooch marks.
Yeah. It's a little gremlin-y at the end of Gremlins 2, like those big smooch marks.
And he goes out to get the women bagels and ice cream. Yeah. He heads to the deli and he asks them what ice cream they have, which is crazy, but it's less crazy than the deli owner who answers that they usually do have ice cream, but the freezer's broken.
I guess it's crazy that a deli's freezer is broken. Like, how are you keeping anything fresh?
Right, and also look, maybe it's different in Massachusetts, but I have never been to a deli that sold ice cream.
And a specific deli, because that's right, you're right, it's a deli. It's not like a corner store that has everything. It's like a deli that I guess sometimes has ice cream.
Yeah, he walked out, he says, imagine that, the deli didn't have ice cream. I'm like, you're right, like, that's normal.
You're going to town, why, even if the deli did have ice cream, why wouldn't you just like make it like the two stop, like instinctively make two stops and go to like the ice cream shop? It's like small towns ice cream shops are generally pretty damn good.
Right. There's no way that it's not better than whatever pint of ice cream he's gonna get.
Yeah.
And it was funny too because before he asks, I'm like, oh, great idea by them because it's so natural to get bagels and ice cream. You obviously have to go to two different places. That'll create like more of a time for them to get their plan done. Yes. And then for him to show up at the one place and be it's a funny moment for me. But like I said, while he's out of the mansion, they sort of scatter to enact their plan. And Suki steals his grimoire, the Malefico, which is a fun name. And Alex uses candle wax and Daryl's hair to create a voodoo doll in his image, although, like they say, it doesn't matter that it doesn't really look like him. And the three women start to stab the doll, hoping that Daryl will leave as a result. One of the sort of like visual film language jokes that I really like about this movie is they're like, oh, this won't hurt him, right? This will just make him leave. Yeah. And then it cuts to him in agony.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's a really like great cut joke. And they drop some feathers on him too, which he coughs up, and then the wind starts to blow him away.
Yeah, feathers disappear.
And he blows right into the church, where of course the sermon is applicable to the situation that's happening, and he realizes the cause of his plight It's the witches.
Yeah.
And
this is where we get his second, like, wonderful monologue where he talks about, like, are women, like, did God do this to men on purpose, or was it an accident? Because if it's an accident, maybe we can do something about it. Maybe we can build up our immune systems. Find a vaccine.
It's great. It's such a fun, like, scene for him to just go off with. They're doing the same cherry trick, and so he's also vomiting up.
Yes. On to, like, that is, like, we get that one, like, because we don't really get I forget the principal's name, but we don't really get like a full like, you know, denouncement, like the principal getting his like comeuppance. So it's just like he gets barfed on. That's his comeuppance.
We're running out of time.
Yeah,
just have Jack Nicholson
put him in the church.
on
He gets barfed on. It's fine.
Yeah, he does this huge rant about women as one of God's mistakes, and he starts talking about he compares them to earthquakes and tsunamis, and how when God makes a mistake, you just call it nature instead of evil. And this sort of runs interestingly parallel to what Suki was saying earlier about women being more natural and connected to nature and all that jazz, and how she's not worried about things being peculiar because that is nature. And it sort of has this interesting parallel. He's going off. It's a lot of fun. And the spells, unfortunately, didn't actually send him away. It just kind of pisses him off.
Yeah.
And so an enraged Daryl races home to punish the witches, and there's more fun magic stuff that happens to him on the way back, thanks to them, or less to them being punitive still, but just like household droppings.
Yeah,
and,
they're like fumbling the doll.
Daryl makes it back, and they run to play it cool. And when he arrives, he's looked better.
Yes, he's looked better. Also, another great, like when he finally comes upon them, like in the TV room. Great like 80s like wall of TV room, and you know they're all trying to play it cool. There's like a great shot where like they all lean in and like Cher, and like one's reading a book, but like Cher leans in and she's like biting the tip of a banana. Just another great like, you know, phallic food moment, and very fun. Like just another great Miller like using the camera to make the comedy moment.
Right. He shows up, and he's turned into this sort of like monster-y version of himself, and he huffs and he puffs and he tries to blow the house down, and they all run to get the voodoo doll again, and they grab it, but while throwing it to each other, Jane drops it and it shatters. And I like this sort of like visual metaphor of it breaking into 3 parts, because then they each have to have one, and they all have to be active in its destruction. They're not allowed to just like the way that they've supported each other the whole time. They have to support each other again here, and it takes all 3 of them to have this moment.
Yeah.
And they throw it into a little fire, and his human shell is broken.
Yes.
And because of this dropping, and he's now this huge monster outside.
Like looks so. I mean, it's like we see it like briefly, but looks so good. Like it looks like I don't know. It's an amazing special effect.
It looks amazing, and the fact that it like still has like Jack Nicholson's like stretched out face on it and everything, it's really wild. And he tries to destroy the mansion, but each one of them throws their part in the fire, and they look outside, and they see that behind this monstrous exterior, he was in fact just a shriveled up little worm, pathetic, as he claimed all the other men from before to be. Yeah. And he blinks out of existence, not to be seen again, or is he?
Yeah, that's 18 months later.
Right. The women are living together in Daryl's mansion. Great ending for them. Yeah. They really made out like bandits here. Yeah. They got to even keep Carol Strucken. He's still the servant there.
He's like the nanny now, and he's really like, and he seems to really like thriving in the role. I'm guessing he's some sort of like servant of the devil, and he's just like these kids are now these kids are the devil. It's like great. This is what I wanted.
And yeah, each one of the women has a new baby son. They carry their pregnancy to term, and each boy shares his mother's hair. They're playing together when Daryl appears on this like TV wall, and he invites them to give Daddy a kiss. But before they can do so, Alex, Jane, and Suki appear and switch off televisions, much to the devil's chagrin. And that is the end of the movie.
Yes. And I love the ending. I think it's like I said, you know, it's really lovely that I think the whole movie is about these 3 women like realizing that they can exist, like it pushing against the boundaries of what a family is or is supposed to be, and realizing they can have that with each other without, you know, without a man, you know, I think they bond around this. They bond around Daryl because he kind of gives them a somewhat legitimate, like, you know, this is a legitimate thing because there is a man, but they're like, no, we can be, our families can blend. We can be this family unit supporting each other. It doesn't need to adhere to like anything anyone understands. Like it even is kind of like the idea of them being this, like, while they are outcasts as like when they are this harem of women like surrounding this like one guy, that's still like an understandable idea. Like it's still like that's they're sluts, but like we understand them within terms of like a thing that already exists. But they're like, no, we're just going to like build our own. It ends with them being like, no, we can build our own family without any kind of like we make the family, we make the structure. We can decide what it is and it isn't, and it's, I don't know, I love it.
I agree. Yeah, I think that, again, there is sort of this way that it still applies to today, and people are still able to relate to it, because now more than ever, people are looking at sexuality as a journey and not just a single destination that you wind up at. And these women, it is perfectly real for them to have felt that that they were in love with Daryl and that they had this great relationship with him. But for them to have come out the other side and feel like they are still in love with having this family together, the three of them, I think it is really great. And I think it's beautiful that they were able to come together in this way after having such restrictions placed on them at the beginning of the movie. It's a great arc for all three of them.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful.
As far as the differences from the book, I mentioned that we would get back into these. There are a few surface level changes, like their last names, who has what hair color. But after Clyde kills Felicia, that's where things really start to change in terms of the plot. Clyde, after killing his wife, hangs himself instead of getting arrested. So he's dead. And they also have two children in the book, a son named Chris and a young adult lab assistant daughter named Jenny. She's like just leaving their house and everything. At one point, Daryl abandons the witches to start a relationship with Jenny, who he actually winds up marrying. And the witches are pissed because now they feel abandoned. It sort of reverses that. And they cast this spell on Jenny that gives her breast cancer and kills her. And so Daryl flees town with Chris as his new lover.
Yeah.
And so you still get this sort of like sexual journey exploration, but the three witches conjure up three more perfect non-demon husbands and marry them. Bingo, bango, bongo. That's the story. And there's also, it's just not as good. It's not nearly as interesting.
Don't like it for a lot of reasons. And
right.
I mean, Updike is I haven't read a lot of Updike. I can't even tell you I remember what I have and haven't read. I've never read this book, but I do know he tends to be thought of as a not unproblematic writer that maybe hasn't, doesn't always do the best job, if ever, with his like female characters. And I do think like this, like, the thing that I was kind of like commenting on about how I'm glad the movie like resist, like teases you, but then like completely rejects the idea that this is going to be about like these women being like vengeful and mean-spirited towards other women. Like that the book like does eventually go in that direction with the Jenny character is gross, and I don't like it.
I totally agree. I think that it's exactly what movies like Jennifer's Body are talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Sort of, right. It's weaponizing women against each other. And the way that the movie changes that, I think, is 1,000% for the better. And we've reached now the part of the show where we sum up exactly why this isn't just a good horror movie, but it is the best horror movie ever made. And Joan, I'm going to let you kick things off.
All right. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of good reasons why this is the best horror movie ever made. First of all, like we've talked about, the cast is just exemplary. It's rare, even in this day of what we like to call like elevated horror, that you get like a cast this, to the wall, amazing, at the peak of their games for like, and definitely this is maybe you'd say is more horror, like fantasy horror comedy than just straight up horror, but still maybe like I guess that you have a few from this era, like definitely Death Becomes Her has a cast that's like all kind of like high of their game. Like Silence of the Lamb is a little bit of that, but that's also definitely like I think you were getting like Jodie Foster and like Anthony Hopkins before they were like these are like stars. So,
upswing still.
Yes, exactly. So there's that right off the bat, and it's I think in a weird way. Or not a weird way, but I think like within the context of like 80s horror, 80s horror is kind of like defined by these, a lot of it was very slashery, but I think like 80s was definitely like the personality, there was like the personality era. I can't remember.
Attitude.
The attitude era. Yes. 80s was like the attitude era of horror where we had like everything revolved around these personalities. And obviously you have like the big ones, like, the ones we remember, like that are really like iconic, like Freddy and Jason. But I feel like Van Horn is kind of like the peak of it. He's like the peak personality horror villain or attitude horror villain. He's so good, so charming, so fun. If this was a cheaper movie with smaller stars, we would have gotten sequels. But it was a one-off with like huge stars that you couldn't recreate, so we didn't get sequels. But Van Horn is just like such great attitude era horror.
Yeah.
And obviously because you have like Nicholson giving. I know I went off on this a little bit, but I think obviously Shining's great. I love The Shining, but I think like what Stephen King's complaint about the movie, which I think is right, is that like Nicholson is kind of not perfectly balanced for the role of like Torrance. Like Nicholson gives you crazy wild-eyed vibes from like minute one, and like that kind of like deters from the story about a a kind of like average family guy who's trying to like exorcise demons that is then like sent off the rails by ghosts. But where this is like this performance is like Nicholson is so perfectly calibrated for this performance and this movie. He never has to rein it in. He never has to play anything but like his like wildest Jack Nicholson best to make it work and make it work for how it should work in the movie. But like there's still like an evolution to it. Like there's still like a natural flow to it where it's like, he's wild. He's a wild devil man from moment one, but like he's allowed to be like the like fun, charismatic version of that you can really buy into at the beginning. And then it kind of like takes you, and then like, but you're still aware that there's like this power and this like creepiness behind it that is allowed to like explode at the end in a really great way. So yeah, there's all that. Those are my initial thoughts.
Great. Hey, I totally agree. I think that this is the best horror movie ever made for me because, I mean, like you sort of touched on, this is an incredible cast. It is all four of the main stars are Oscar winners or Oscar nominees. And it's so easy to understand why when you look at them in this movie. And the fact that they're all getting to have fun, too.
Yeah.
Like, the fun in this movie totally comes through. I have a ball watching it. I think that it's absolutely a delight. And getting to experience these women finding joy in their lives is such a wonderful moment.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful journey to go on with them. And like you say, Jack Nicholson is getting to sort of ham it up and chew on the scenery a little bit. But he also gets to have these fun, dramatic moments as well where he brings it down a little bit. And I mean, I've already given major props to Veronica Cartwright this entire way, but one last shout out for her because she is just so good in this movie. All that on top of the fact that you have George Miller really absolutely nailing the direction, making the camera work interesting instead of flat and boring, because if you have a dead camera, that magic of this movie doesn't come through.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it just has such a fall atmosphere. It's the perfect movie to watch as you're leading into the horror season.
Yes.
It's just wonderful, gang. I love it a lot.
You know what I find? It's both a really, if you're having like a horror movie marathon, it's either a really great start or a really great finish. Like it bookends really well. Like I said, I saw this like a couple of years ago. I went to like a cemetery every year here in LA. There's every summer, not this summer, but past summers there were they do cemetery screenings, and they always do like one all-nighter. And I went to see this on a triple feature, like in a cemetery. It was The Craft, Practical Magic, and then this. And this was like the perfect.
Wow,
such a good, like the perfect capper.
That's a great triple feature, too.
Really, it was very fun. Very, like, one of my favorite, like, LA movie-going experiences of my life in general. But
awesome.
I also, like, it's very good. It's a very good, like, spooky season movie. I also think, I you know what's weird? I was, like, watching this movie this time today, I was like, this movie would be like a good double bill with Hellraiser. And I also like started like putting together this theory of like is Jack Nicholson, is he like a Cenobite? Is he like a low-key Cenobite? Because like like I think both movies, they're kind of like reflections of each other in that Pinhead always has his like little speech about how like, you know, like the Cenobites are like travelers of dimensions who are like experiencing, like testing out the extremes of both humans, like pain and
the boundaries of human existence.
Pain and
experience.
Yes, it's like he's always like pain and pleasure, but like you never see the pleasure. It's always just like people getting like torn apart by hooks. It's like I don't know what pleasure he's talking about. But I feel like Van Horn is like he's comes to test the limits of like human like pleasure. And they're both about people who like conjure up this the thing they think they're looking for, and like the havoc that wreaks on their lives. But like one is all about like let's like just like indulge in the pleasure and the ecstasy, and the other is like let's indulge and like it's just like
very cool.
So like and I like thinking about that, I was like, I looked it up, I was like, holy shit, these movies came out like within I think like this came out in June or July of '87, and Hellraiser came out in October, and it's like weird, like what was going on at the end of the '80s that horror was very into like exploring the extremes of human experience, like
it's all that coke
indulgences. I don't know. It's an interesting little thesis that I could dig deeper into.
Absolutely,
yeah. But
I totally agree, and I honestly that sounds like a fun double bill.
Yeah.
Because I would start off with Hellraiser. You get all that great gore and everything, and then you kind of taper off with this nice. Still has some fun moments that kind of set you off at a little unease there.
For sure.
But, it still has the comedy, and the only thing that would make this movie better is if, like Hellraiser, it had Chatterer in it.
Ooh, yeah, Chatterer.
I love that guy.
Yeah, Chatterer and maybe Butterball. Two great Cenobites.
Yeah. All right, put the whole crew in.
Yeah, I love Cenobites. Put them in anything. Love the Cena crew.
Yeah, and so that's why this is the best horror movie ever made. Joan, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
And please tell people where they can find you, watch you, listen to you, all that jazz.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram as Joan Haley Ford. I'm also on Twitch a lot. My Twitch is twitch.tv/Joan Haley Ford. So if you can find one, you can find them all. And that's it.
Great. As far as my plugs, I'm on Twitter at LittleHorrorPHL. I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/LittleHorrorPHL. If you want to support the show there, you can not only get ad-free and early episodes, but you can even get bonus stuff. And isn't that exciting? So support us there. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, leave a rating and a review if you're enjoying the show and you haven't done that already. But that's pretty much it. Just go to Little Horror PHL at all of the places. And that's it. Bye.
Bye.